Chapter 71. A Father and Son from a Country in the South China Sea. You are listening at Mtlnovel Audio. Although the latest issue of the major newspapers has not yet been released, the arrest of the slave king has begun to gradually ferment among the top leaders of the countries in the South China Sea, and undercurrents are surging back and forth along with the communication between the phone bugs, because in terms of the prosperity of the slave trade, the South China Sea is undoubtedly the first among the four sea areas. Of course, this is also inseparable from the fact that King Taklama has worked hard here for decades and made outstanding contributions to the development of the slave industry. The mafia in the North Sea and the slave owners in the South China Sea are the biggest characteristics of these two sea areas. The heavy industry in the former is more developed, while the light industry in the latter is more prosperous. The Kingdom of Yanad is such a typical South China Sea country. At this time, a young, handsome man with blonde curly hair and wearing a blue-gold noble dress, under the watchful eyes of guards holding muskets on both sides, walked up the stairs towards the palace hall built of large white stones. "Father," the young man walked into the hall with an elegant pace and bowed respectfully to the middle-aged man sitting on the throne. "Pericles, you are finally here, come and see this." The king wore a golden crown set with sapphires. When he saw his eldest son coming, his serious and heavy face suddenly turned into a joyous one. He stood up and walked off the platform, handing over the intelligence report in his hand. "Okay, please wait a moment." The prince of the Yanad kingdom took the report and read it carefully with a smile, but his expression became similar to that of the king before, and then he raised his head and said, "Father, I don't think we can just take things at face value regarding the kingdom of Thutmose. This means that the world government is going to take big action against the slave trade." "Yeah, I've also thought of this. The world government doesn't know what's going on. It has acquiesced to things that have happened for hundreds of years. It just changes its attitude." The king complained, rubbing his eyebrows. In the past, he believed that even if King Taklama's identity was exposed, the world government would not allow the navy to touch him easily, but now, he didn't say hello at all and just arrested him. This matter has a great impact on the South China Sea, and an even greater impact on our kingdom of Yanad. Prince Pericles said while repeatedly looking at the contents of the report in his hand. Their country has always purchased slaves through various channels, and the slaves are responsible for producing light industrial goods in factories, and then use the proceeds from the sales to allocate part of the funds for the slaves' food and supplements. The remaining land is used for various domestic operations and for paying the annual heavenly gold. In this way, they have liberated the living burdens of all citizens and vigorously cultivated their management talents. Citizens only need to improve their knowledge, study hobbies, and exercise. This is regarded as the national policy of the Yanad kingdom, and successive kings have governed the country in this way, because they found that this approach was very effective. The citizens below lived in a wealthy, comfortable, relaxed, and clean environment. Naturally, they supported their royal family very much, and they became one of the few countries in the world that has continued to rule for hundreds of years. Of royal family. Because of their successful template, many countries in the South China Sea have rushed to imitate it, and most of them have even gone more extreme. Rumor has it that there is a kingdom called St. Margaret. Its royal family and nobles directly turn all its citizens into slaves. They not only use them as cheap labor, but also secretly sell them as commodities when needed. Prince Pericles said to the king, "If the world government really wants to severely control the slave trade, or even strictly prohibit the existence of slaves, then we must be prepared in all aspects." In fact, there is news circulating in the aristocratic circles recently that at the World Conference to be held this year, the 5 old stars will propose the issue of total ban on slavery. The king walked back and forth in distress and continued, "I didn't take it seriously before, thinking it was a ridiculous rumor, but the slave king has been caught, so we have to be cautious." When Prince Pericles heard this, he frowned, looked at the irritable figure of the king, and raised his voice to remind, "Calm down, father." The latter was stunned and realized that he had lost his composure. He shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "I really don't know what to do now. There are no slaves. What can our kingdom do? Plus." At the end of the sentence, the king showed hesitation, and Prince Pericles asked doubtfully, "What else should be added?" Hey, let me tell you, Margaret III of the St. Margaret Kingdom just called me and hopes that our Yenad Kingdom can join their alliance. Alliance? Prince Pericles suddenly felt something bad and quickly asked, tell me carefully, what does he want to do? That the king walked up to the stage, sat back on the throne a little tiredly, and said to the eldest son in the audience, he is planning to secretly establish a South China Sea alliance. He said that if this year's World Conference goes as usual, that's all. But if the decision to completely ban slavery is really passed, then just respond the way the alliance does. They want to compete with the world government. Prince Pericles opened his mouth and looked at the king in shock. No, Marjorie III means that she will not resist head-on and will try to avoid conflicts as much as possible. However, the matter of banning slaves has no right within the alliance. Her attitude towards the world government is to delay it as long as possible. If she really withdraws in the end, there is no way to retreat, and when the time comes, we will use the alliance forces of various countries to confront it. Prince Pericles was silent for a moment and said, then have you joined? No, I just told him to think about it. Isn't that why he is worried about this matter? The king shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then are you willing to listen to my opinion? I called you here just to ask what you mean. The king looked at Prince Pericles expectantly, because he knew that the other party was much better than himself. The latter raised his head and said resolutely, then my opinion is rejection, because this is an extremely stupid way to die, to exterminate the clan, and even to subjugate the country. That the king froze upon hearing this, while Prince Pericles continued his statement. The kingdom of Jerma was so powerful back then that it even dominated the entire North Sea. The total number of kingdoms willing to follow it exceeded 20. But what's the result? 66 days, just 66 days, they were completely defeated by the naval fleet sent by the world government. The so-called South China Sea Alliance composed of just a few kingdoms. How many more days can it last? That the king nodded subconsciously after hearing this, but he was still unwilling to accept it and hesitated. What about the slaves? Our kingdom cannot live without slaves. Father, which one is more serious injury or death? Prince Pericles shouted, free the slaves, we can spend money to hire them, and our treatment of the slaves is not harsh. We provide basic guarantees of food, drink, clothing and housing, and we don't let them be whipped at will. I believe there will be some people willing to stay and work. Even if it doesn't happen, it will be uncomfortable for a few years or 10 years at most. We will adjust slowly. But if we fight against the world government, the best result is to go to the East China Sea to build a bridge with all the citizens. That it was the first time that the king saw his eldest son so excited. He suddenly smiled and said, Pericles, tell the truth. If I told you just now that I decided to join the South Sea Alliance, what would you do? Prince Pericles was stunned, and after a moment of silence, he said softly, I will leave alone tonight, and then change my name and find a way to join the navy. The corner of the king's mouth twitched and he asked, don't you want to persuade my father? Good words can't persuade a damned devil. Once you've made a decision, there's no need to say more. Chapter 72 The Slave King's Choice. You are listening at MTnovel Almost there. Dolag opened the hatch and walked out, asking Major General Ivan, who was watching the sea on the deck. At this time, the 5 headquarters-level warships he led had returned to the first half of the great route from the South China Sea. Calculating the time, it seemed that they were almost there. Major General Dolag, you should rest more if you are so seriously injured, and just leave it to me to hand over the prisoners to Impel City. Major General Ivan said with a smile. No, I said before that I will send the slave king in with my own hands. Dolag walked to Major General Ivan, looked at the gate of justice appearing on the far side and said, this means a lot to me. You have said so, okay, then I will escort Colonel Hansa and Colonel Weir to the Judiciary Island for trial, and then we can get together at Marineland and have a drink. After the battle in the kingdom of Thutmose, Major General Ivan's attitude towards Dolag became more respectful and awe-inspiring. On the one hand, he was convinced by the strength shown by the latter. On the other hand, he would definitely be promoted to lieutenant general after returning this time. Okay. Dolag had no objection. He actually liked drinking. At this moment, another masked man in white walked out of the cabin quietly. This man came to the deck and just stood silently in the corner. Major General Ivan glanced over and asked in a low voice, "How long will these cipher poles be with you?" Did he know that there was a masked man in white on another warship nearby? The two men were keeping a close eye on Dolag from afar. "Don't worry about them. They will disappear naturally when it's time to disappear." Dolag had no interest in looking back at all, because he had given up the idea of defecting from the Navy and was ready to see the subsequent changes in the world government and Navy. I have to say that this mission made him feel happy and gave him a glimmer of hope. Half an hour later, the gate of justice slowly opened, and the 5 warships immediately parted ways. Dolag led one ship from the left current to MaleProtagonist City, while Major General Ivan led the remaining 4 ships along the right current. Hurry to the Isle of Justice and then back to Marineland. This is the triangular current formed by 3 gates of justice connecting huge whirlpools. Its flow speed is quite fast. Dolag's warship can reach the gate of the propulsion city in less than 10 minutes. Immediately afterwards, 2 majors from the headquarters wearing justice coats were seen taking King Taklama out of the cell in the cabin and escorting him to the deck of the warship. The former slave king of the Dark World was now handcuffed with seafloor stone handcuffs, and his steps looked very weak. After all, his injuries had not fully recovered, and his mood was even worse. "I told you that justice will surely defeat evil, and I will personally send you to the Impel City. Now, I have done it." Faced with King Taklama's vicious gaze, Dolag looked at him calmly. King Taklama gritted his teeth, but was speechless. Therefore, his mood at this time was extremely complicated. He felt like he wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to say it. If he had to describe it simply and clearly, it would probably be that he wanted to yell at Dolag, "You are fucking cheating." But now, this slave king, who was so aggrieved that his lungs were about to burst, could only breathe heavily and say nothing. As for cursing, he had already cursed him on the way here in the past few days. He is tired of scolding. The entire handover process was very smooth, because this time the prisoner had a special identity, and Director Columbus came out to accept it in person. In the team of guards behind him, you could still see the figure of Moonlight Maria, with his huge size. It is indeed too obvious. Speaking of Maria these days, it was really a lot easier, because for some unknown reason a few days ago, the director stopped him from continuing to cut out the shadows of prisoners on the first 4 floors of the underground, and asked him to put all the shadows back. To be honest, he was very angry and unwilling at first. It was the fruit of his hard work for a long time. Now if he was asked to let it all go, wouldn't the previous time have been wasted, and there was still money to be swiped? A feeling of, therefore, he immediately responded to the other party's outburst of temper. He did not flinch at all because of the other party's director status, and directly assumed that if he didn't give me an explanation, he would start a fight. Moonlight Maria's idea is very simple. He promised the world government to be a jailer here, but he didn't promise not to beat the director, right? As long as you continue to stay in Impel Down after the beating, the contract has not been broken. Fortunately, Columbus said to him, "Who has time to play tricks on you? The people above have other uses for the prisoners on the first 4 floors, so they cannot be left without shadows. Furthermore, when are you going to cut off these hundreds of thousands of prisoners? Not too tired?" When Moonlight Maria thought about it at the time, it really made sense. Although the time before was wasted, wouldn't it be that the time in the future will be saved? So he happily accepted this statement. So his current job was to cut the shadows of heavy criminals with bounties of hundreds of millions on the 5 underground levels of extreme cold hell and the 6 underground levels of infinite hell. However, the cut shadows required turn it over and keep it in the director's office on the 4th floor of the scorching hell underground. This time the workload was greatly reduced, and it was completed in 2 days. Normally, I only had to patrol back and forth, send some food to my fellow comrades in the prison from time to time, and chat. The main reason why he followed him out this time was because the slave king, King Taklama, would be imprisoned in the infinite hell on the 6th floor underground, so he needed to cut out the shadows smoothly, after the people were handed over to Impel Down City. Dolag turned around and left to report to Malinfando, while King Taklama was directly thrown into 100-degree boiling water for sterilization and disinfection, which is the so-called baptism. However, with his strength, he could just grit his teeth and get over it, which is equivalent to an ordinary person taking a hot bath, then putting on a uniform zebra pattern prison uniform, and adding a sea tower stone anklet to his feet, etc. After Moria came over with big scissors and cut off the shadow, the basic process was completed. Finally, he took the internal elevator and was taken directly to the infinite hell at the bottom. Under the watchful eyes of Director Columbus and several jailers behind him, he slowly walked into his own cell. At this moment, Director Columbus raised his hand and waved, telling the jailers to leave on their own, and then walked into King Taklama's cell. "You." The latter turned around and became alert. Director Columbus chuckled and said, "Don't be nervous, let's have a chat." "What are you talking about?" "I remember we didn't know each other before, right?" King Taklama remained vigilant. The former asked with a smile, "Do you feel that there is something missing in our prisoners here?" King Taklama had a question mark on his head, frowned, and lowered his voice. "What exactly do you want to say?" In the dark cell, the slave king and the director of Mtlnovel City were facing each other, but the atmosphere was a bit strange. "I'll give you two choices. 1. Continue to be your prisoner here, and 2. Follow me out and become a jailer. How about it? It shouldn't be a difficult choice, right?" Director Columbus smiled. "What?" King Taklama was stunned, and suddenly understood what the other party meant before when he said that the prisoners here lacked something. "You are interested in my pet fruit ability and want me to put pet rings on the prisoners here." Director Columbus nodded. "Yes, what is your decision?" "This is indeed an easy multiple-choice question." King Taklama laughed. Compared to staying in the cell and reading newspapers, it would definitely be more comfortable to move around in the corridor outside. I agreed, but should this shadow be returned to me? There was no shadow, and he always felt something was wrong. He didn't think Mtlnovel would cut people's shadows for no reason. There must be some use. Director Columbus glanced at the empty ground under his feet and said with a smile, "You have to tell your colleague Moonlight Moria about this. After all, he is the shadow fruit-capable user." Moonlight Moria. The slave king recalled the tall figure that reduced his shadow on the sea, and it seemed that he would find an opportunity to ask. Chapter 73 Jinbe arrives at Marineland. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. On Dolag's side, the warship slowly sailed into the port of Marineland. The atmosphere here was still as lively as ever, with dozens of large warships lined up. People of all levels of the navy were coming and going, up and down. The square, which could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people fighting, did not appear empty at all. In the distance, the huge and magnificent fortress of justice looked down on everything like a king. "Those pirates will be locked up for the time being. I'll talk to the marshal about this first." Drago ordered a major behind him. "Yes." Just as the major turned to go to the cabin to deal with the matter, Dorag's eyes stopped on another parked warship not far away. There were many naval forces gathering there. If he looked at the square from a straight angle, he would probably not be able to see anything. However, standing on the deck of the warship from a high position, he could clearly see what was going on inside. "Murloc? Mermaid?" Yes, I saw male Murlocs walking down from the warship one after another. It was estimated that there were hundreds of them, and there were also several beautiful ladies among them. If their clothes were not full of the exotic style of Fishman Island looks no different from human women. "Wow, is this the Navy headquarters? It's so big." Kuna, who had flowing blue hair, grabbed the arm of her partner next to her with excitement and laughed as soon as she stepped onto the ground in the square. "Yeah, everything here is so big, the buildings are big, the squares are big, the boats are big, look. Look. There are super tall people there." Evany, who was grabbed by the arm and rocked back and forth, was also very excited. A pair of beautiful eyes swept across the fortress of justice and the square, and finally stopped on the giant lieutenant general passing by in the distance. She couldn't close her mouth immediately. To them, the giants are considered legendary existences. Ah, so beautiful. Are they mermaids? Mermaids from fairy tales. One day I can actually see them with my own eyes, at such a close distance, that the surrounding sailors' eyes were also shining at this time, and their eyes were like high-definition cameras, automatically ignoring all kinds of strange mermaids, and keeping a close eye on the few mermaid girls who counted only 5 in number. For a moment, the 3 groups of humans, mermaids, and fishmen looked at each other, which made the scene more interesting. But why did Lieutenant General Akiji bring so many murlocs? Among the Navy crowd, a captain looked at Kazan in doubt. Maybe it was brought for a visit. I think it's possible, but are you sure you didn't bring it for us to visit? At this moment, Dolag came over. Everywhere he went, navies at all levels cleared a way out. Now the entire Navy headquarters knew that the son of Vice Admiral Garp was also a natural ability user, and he was destined to be a natural ability user in the future. Boss, however, the latest issue of the newspaper would not be released for 2 days, so they did not know about the slave king's arrest yet. Kazan, what's going on with these fishmen? That while Dolag asked, he glanced at Jinbe and Aladdin beside him, because the aura on them was the strongest. Alalalala, judging from your situation, you must have just come back from work. Kazan showed a smile. He and Dolag were quite familiar. After all, he had been with Garp for a while before, so the relationship between the two was not bad. They are the first batch of fishmen and mermaids to join the Navy. This is Lieutenant Colonel Jinping, who will be the commander of the fishmen troops in the future, and this is Major Aladdin, the deputy commander. After finishing speaking, Kazan introduced Dolag to Jinbe and Aladdin, and said with a smile, this is Major General Dolag, the son of Lieutenant General Garp, and also a natural ability user. Hello, Major General Dolag, please give me your advice in the future. Jinbe greeted as the representative. Hello. Dolag nodded in surprise, and then looked at Kazan with doubtful eyes. The latter touched the back of his head and briefly explained the cooperation between the world government and Fishman Island with a smile. This is no longer something that needs to be kept secret. The Marshal will inform the entire army about the fishmen later. Set the Shampoo Islands as a safe zone for fishmen, allowing the Sea King's army to station and patrol there. The Navy also established a naval branch on Fishman Island, and invited 200 fishmen and mermaids to join the Navy. Dolag quickly went through the important information in his mind, and the more he thought about it, the more surprised he became. In conjunction with his mission to capture the Slave King, it can be seen that the world government will deal with slaves ruthlessly this time, but he is still confused to this day as to what happened to the world government and why it suddenly changed so much that he no longer recognizes it. So the Navy King's army has now settled in the Chambord Islands? Yes, they set out with us and should have arrived by now. From now on, Area 6-2 there will be the exclusive station of the Sea King Army, which happens to be adjacent to our naval base there. While Kazan and Dolag were chatting, the surrounding Navy crowd separated again, and the gap was even wider. Only a middle-aged female lieutenant general with a dark blue ponytail was seen leading a team of female generals. The school came over. Alalalala, long time no see, Lieutenant General Kazan saw the person coming and took 2 quick steps to greet him. Dolag on the side also followed closely and greeted him respectfully. Hello. Yes, it won't be long, but when you go back this time, I really won't see you for a while. Lieutenant General, he said to Kazan gently, then looked at Dolag and smiled. This mission, thank you for your hard work, you did a great job, go up quickly, Marshal Kong is waiting for you. Yes, Dolag nodded, no longer lingering, and quickly walked towards the magnificent Fortress of Justice. After arriving at the headquarters, most of the ability users would consciously not use their abilities and the 6th naval style. It was not only to express respect for Malinfando, but also to maintain basic order. Otherwise, the noise would be too chaotic. We have to go back as soon as possible. The situation on Fishman Island is not very good. Basically, pirates break in every day, especially the pirates from the New World, who are the most troublesome. Kazan looked troubled when he mentioned this. He couldn't sleep well at night in the past 2 days, because many smart pirates would choose to do it at night. Huh, where are you? If those big pirates pass by Fishman Island one day, you will be in big trouble. That Lieutenant General, he gave a reminder and said, you must be careful when dealing with it there, especially not to relax in training your own strength, so as to reach the combat power of a general as soon as possible. Allah, I understand all this. Kazan listened to Lieutenant General He's earnest words and enjoyed this feeling in his heart. He had been alone since he was a child, picking up rags and stealing things in order to survive. Fortunately, he met he who worked in the Nanhai branch when he was young, and was brought to the naval base to be raised and educated. Finally, he had a good living environment also gave him a high enthusiasm for the Navy. So for Kazan, there is not much difference between Lieutenant Commander Crane and his adoptive mother. Lieutenant General he began to talk about business and said, okay, leave these mermaids to me. They will join the female soldiers in the future. As for the fishmen, you take them to Building C in the number 3 dormitory area. Their specific duties, etc. Official notification from the Marshal. Yes. Kazan naturally had no objection and asked casually with a smile, is Teacher Zifa here? I have brought a special wine from Fishman Island and I want to have a drink with him. What a coincidence, he just came back with this batch of students last night. You should go quickly. By the way, take them to the dormitory first. This is business. Okay, don't worry, it won't be delayed. Kazan responded with a smile. Jinbe, Aladdin and nearly 200 Murlocs on the side were looking at the surrounding environment and looking forward to the future in their hearts. The fish people are finally beginning to integrate into the human world. Chapter 74 The Noisy Countries in the North Sea. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Bang, the roar sounded on the ground, exploding large pieces of grass and broken soil, and a yellow flash shot out from the smoke. The next moment, a white figure appeared in the air with a rapid sound of breaking through the air, and actually blasted the flash back. Shave, as Jiaohe appeared in the field, the black figure at the other end turned into an afterimage and disappeared, and in an instant he was in front of the yellow flash. Boom. I saw the beam of light hitting the net-shaped racket hard. The strong rotation and force caused a clicking and friction sound, and gradually showed dents visible to the naked eye. Invisible air waves continued to overflow between the ball and the net, and the strong wind blew the surrounding turf and her blonde hair around. The strength is stronger again. Stuzy gritted his teeth secretly as he felt the constant pressure on his hands, directly changed from a one-handed grip to a two-handed grip and hit the ball back. The orange beam of light reappeared, with a roaring sound, and instantly passed through the middle net and flew high into the sky. Well done. At the other end of the court, a sweaty Guillaume shouted with excitement. The power gathered on those super long legs, and he jumped high. His white and tender arm muscles suddenly bulged, and he caught the ball hard. A strong wave of air swept over him and knocked him down hard. Bang. Stussy's sexy legs wearing mesh black stockings moved quickly, dragging the afterimages behind them, and caught the tennis ball just before it hit the ground at a speed beyond imagination for ordinary people. At the same time, a black luster covered the racket, easily returning Guillaume's smash. The latter's expression changed when he saw this scene in the air. Have you finally used your domineering power? Shave. He stepped hard and a ball of air turned into white mist and disappeared into the sky. The next second, he appeared on the ground. Guillaume's hockey of observation and information stared at the direction of the incoming beam, and at the same time, he used armed hockey to strengthen his racket to fight back. The two elite ladies from the Navy headquarters and Cypher Pole finally started to show their true feelings. They were seen running on their respective half-courts into dazzling afterimages, turning into yellow flashing tennis balls that kept going back and forth between the figures. Flying, drawing long and thin trajectories in mid-air. If it were an ordinary person, it would be difficult for them to keep up with the speed of the three of them even with their eyes wide open, let alone which side on the field has the advantage. The only thing they can feel is the constant deafening sound of hitting the ball. Fortunately, I'm lying half on the beach chair is not an ordinary person. Under his pair of invisible contact lenses, the rippled eyes are like an ultra-high-definition camera that can clearly see all the details of the two people's movements. As expected, Gion's strength is stronger. The strength, speed, and reaction of the powerful swordsman can be displayed to the fullest even when playing tennis. It's interesting to say that Gion was resistant to playing tennis at first, but after he learned it and played a few balls, he was hooked. This kind of sport that can use all aspects of one's own strength made Gion, who has lived in Marineland since childhood, become obsessed with it. Many girls experienced intense pleasure, especially when his opponent was CP9, who was also a woman. His competitive spirit was immediately aroused. As a result, him hasn't played much in the past 2 days. He has been watching from the sidelines as the two women quarreled on the court, using tennis balls to determine the outcome. To be honest, watching beautiful women playing ball makes me feel really good. TSK, 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 it's great, this day is called comfortable. Took a sip of the bright red wine in the crystal cup, squinting and admiring the murderous tennis ball in front of him. This tennis is a good thing. It must be promoted in the future. North Sea, while I was enjoying the quiet time in the holy land of Marijoya, ships bearing the logo of the world government were moving among the islands. This made the nobles of various countries in the North Sea nervous, who had set their sights on the South China Sea due to the Slave King incident. They always feel that the world government has been somewhat dishonest recently. Dover. On Spidamorous Island, Doflamingo was studying the world map in the house when he heard Torrebel exclaiming from outside the door. When he looked up, he just opened the door and walked in. I saw Torrebel walking in wearing a thick blue cloak that looked slimy on the ground, holding a golden cane, and had eye-catching black anklets tied to his feet. What's wrong? Speak slowly. Dover, the world government's ship has arrived at our place and is parked at the port now. Hearing this, Doflamingo frowned as he sat back on the sofa and said, Are you here to pick up someone to attend this year's World Conference? That's not right. I remember there is only one mayor on this island and no king. Have you found out their purpose of coming here? That if it were before, he might have thought that he was here to target the Don Quixote family, but now he is one of the 7 warlords under the king. Although this identity cannot be disclosed to the public, it also guarantees that he will not be captured by the world government and the navy again. Thinking of this here, he glanced at the X-shaped wristband on his right wrist. I have asked, and people in the mayor's office have spread the news that the world government is taking away a group of outstanding financial personnel. Torrebel gasped. Financial officer. Doflamingo raised his head in surprise, then looked through the window into the depths of the island, then turned back and asked, How many people are they going to take away? Dover, it's not a matter of how many people are taken away, but they want to take away the best group of people. Then what will happen to our business in the future? Torrebel said anxiously, the training of financial personnel is not a simple matter. Their arms business needs these people everywhere, which also gives Doflamingo a headache. In the past, I might have been able to find a way to intercept it, but now that I have been secretly incorporated, it is inappropriate to go against the world government. As for not leaving evidence, when did the world government pay attention to this kind of thing? They just need to know that this is their own territory, and they will definitely take action if anything happens. Besides this, is there anything else? Torrebel thought for a while, nodded, and said, Yes, it is said that the people from the world government will also allocate funds to support the schools on the island and expand the scale of the schools. Not only here, I heard that as long as the kingdoms and islands with a certain industrial base have lost their people, yes, not only the finance, I thought about it, as long as the outstanding talents in the administrative field have to be transferred. Anyway, the world government people are making quite a fuss. When Doflamingo heard this, he shook his head and said with a smile, Bah. There's nothing we can do about it. This is obviously an important action of the world government, but we can't be the only one to suffer. Go and reveal to them the location of the forces that compete with us. In addition to the base camp, you must also know their factories and financial conditions. Torrebel nodded repeatedly and left Ming Ge's room. What on earth are you going to do, 5 old stars? Doflamingo looked at the blue sky and pondered, or is that what that person meant? That after returning from Marijo, he had been thinking about a question. If that Sama is really a monster that has existed for hundreds of years, then why did he only appear now and create this King Shichibukai? Or is it that this King Shichibukai actually existed already, and he is just a member of the new generation? What does a world government need with so many administrative and financial staff? For some reason, Doflamingo vaguely felt that the direction of the world was changing. Chapter 75 The Historical Text of Being Taken Away. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. On the Fishman Island 10,000 meters deep in the sea, the Dragon Palace city bathed in bright sunshine is still bright, and the golden and green dragon is still so luxurious and majestic. The left minister of Catfish Fish stood below and reported in a deep voice to King Neptune on the throne, "Your Majesty, you have made contact with Fisher Tiger. He said that he can return to Fishman Island in 3 days at most." "Really, what did he say? Would you like to join the navy?" King Neptune asked, stroking his long orange beard. Fisher Tiger's answer was that he was unwilling. He said that Jinbe and Aladdin in the navy were enough. He hoped to join the navy and then go to the Shampoo Islands to protect his future compatriots so that they could feel at ease. Live and play there. After hearing this, King Neptune pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay, the Navy army stationed in the Shampoo Islands does need a master to be in charge. This matter needs to be communicated with the Navy, and the situation should be explained clearly, so as not to cause any trouble." "Misunderstand?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Ministers were responded respectfully. "What's going on in the Shampoo Islands now? Is there any specific news?" King Neptune continued to ask. Ministers were replied, "Because this is the first time, Minister Wright went to take command in person. I heard that the facilities in Area 62 are very complete, and it only needs a few adjustments to easily move in. Under the guidance of the Navy, they are getting familiar with the environment of the entire Shampoo Islands. Starting tomorrow, they will officially carry out patrol missions. According to the Navy's explanation, this is to allow the residents of the island to get used to the existence of the fish people and prepare for the future. Prepare to receive the civilian fishmen." King Neptune nodded with satisfaction and said, "Yes, very safe. I am now more and more confident in future cooperation. The world government seems to be sincere this time. Yes, since the Navy entered Fishman Island, they have solved more than a dozen groups of pirates who tried to capture the mermaids, and many mermaids have been saved. Now the people's attitude towards the Navy has gradually become more welcoming and enthusiastic." Ministers will also said his face was full of joy. In the past, due to the lack of experts, it was difficult for Fishman Island to fight against the human pirates with higher bounties, but now that the generals from the Navy headquarters have settled in, the pressure has suddenly been reduced. Whenever the Sea King army encounters pirates that are difficult to deal with, they will always immediately request support from the island's navy, which also makes the relationship between the two races closer. It's just that we gave the 2 historical texts of Haiji Forest to the world government. Wei Chen is still a little worried. He always feels that this goes against the instructions of his ancestors. Ministers will looked at King Neptune hesitantly. Is this really okay? Hey, I really have no choice. I don't know where the world government learned about this matter. The Vice Admiral Akiji personally came to ask for it and wanted to take it away with the 200 fishmen who went to the Navy. King Neptune frowned, grabbed his beard hard, and said tangledly, "You tell me, can I refuse? The historical text is something that the world government has expressly prohibited from researching and possessing. It was fine if the world government didn't know about it before and just didn't mention it. But if they know it, they must cooperate to send the things there." To be honest, the world government is being polite enough by not arresting Fishman Island for concealing and not reporting the crime. Wei Chen, I understand. Ministers was sighed. On the throne, the huge King Neptune fell into memories for a while. More than 800 years ago, Joy Boy made an agreement with the mermaid princess at that time to use Noah's Ark to bring all the fish and mermaids to the sea to live under the sun forever, but in the end, the agreement was not kept due to an accident, so the apology was engraved on the historical text, and a prophecy was left at the end, saying that one day in the future, a person would appear to fulfill the agreement on his behalf. When that day comes, Noah's Ark will be given its mission for the first time. This is the legend passed down from generation to generation by the royal family of Fishman Island. Although they cannot understand the words in the historical text, they remember this legend very clearly. Therefore, leaving the bottom of the sea and enjoying the sunshine and forests on the sea has become the long-cherished wish of all the fish people for hundreds of years, and to protect the Noah's Ark from generation to generation. But now, under the guidance of the world government, the Fishmen tribe's long-cherished wish to live uprightly in the sun is about to come. It seems that there is no need for Noah's Ark, let alone the need to continue waiting for the appearance of the person who can replace Joey Boy. This also made King Neptune's mood extremely complicated at this time. Is the legend really just a legend, or has that person already appeared, but only on the side of the world government? Hey, we on Fishman Island can only believe in the world government and wait and see. King Neptune raised his head and looked up into the sky. His deep gaze seemed to have passed through the ceiling, the roof, the 10,000-meter deep sea, and the red earth continent. Don't let us down, celestial dragon. On the red earth continent, within the holy land of Mary Joa, came alone to the deepest underground of Pongal Castle. This is the historical storage room. The world government is naturally aware of the existence of the historical text, and has a dedicated team responsible for finding and recovering it. The top person in charge is the 5-old star with goatee. So after so many years, I have also found some historical texts and put them all in this dark and cold place. No, the 2 new products from Fishman Island are also placed here. Apologies. Stood in front of the dark blue historical text that was more than 10 meters high inside, watching the memories deep in its mind slowly emerge, and Joey Boy's face and figure seemed to appear before his eyes. To think about it, you guys would never have imagined that the person who fulfills the agreement on your behalf and gives the Fishman Island sunshine, forests and freedom is none other than me, right? Back then, I personally destroyed that huge kingdom where all races coexisted. Now I want to use my own way to create a world government that can truly be called a coexistence of all races, and is even bigger and greater. In his opinion, the huge kingdom back then was good, but unfortunately, it was not his huge kingdom, so it should be destroyed. Breaking away from his memories, glanced at the red historical text on the side. Over the years, the world government has never found such a historical text with the nature of a road sign, and this is the first one. In this way, even if there are still people looking for road signs in the future, it will be useless even if he gathers the 3 outside. To be honest, as a time traveler, doesn't think these historical texts are of much use, except for those that record ancient weapons. In his view, past history has passed. Even if there were indeed conspiracies during the war, in the end, wouldn't the winner be the king or the loser? As long as the next world government can make most people in various countries live comfortably, eat well, drink well, wear well, and everything is harmonious, then what will happen even if the past history is made public one day? How many people would give up the food in their bowls, take off their fine clothes, leave behind their healthy and growing children for the sake of past history, pick up swords to avenge the huge kingdom of those days, and fight against the world government? No matter how dark the past is, it is still the past and can never compete with the brightness of the future. However, there is no harm in collecting historical texts. He has no intention of stopping this work from continuing. It saves him a trouble. Anyway, his subordinates will be busy with the work. He only needs to reveal a few locations he knows. The most important thing now is to recover the historical text hidden in the burial sacrifice hall of the Kingdom of Alabasta. It records the location of the Pluto body, and it is also considered a dangerous item. But how do you tell people about this? There are prohibited items in your ancestral tomb and you need to send someone in to collect them. Himself was amused by this statement. Forget it, let's talk to the other party first. It's best to negotiate amicably. After all, this is Alabasta, and I don't want to be violent. Weiwei is quite beautiful. Chapter 76, How to Fool the 5 Old Stars. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. The temperature in the historical storage room is extremely low. It can even be said to be a cold storage room, and the light is relatively dark, giving people a dark and scary feeling. Fortunately, didn't feel any discomfort at all. These historical texts evoke thoughts about Joey Boy, so he was not in a hurry to leave. The tennis games these days had greatly relieved his psychological depression, so he was in a happy mood. If it was the predecessor, he would naturally feel that Joey Boy was dead and would no longer cause serious trouble to himself and the world government, but he was different. He knew very well that Joey Boy was probably not dead. I saw him slowly walking to another compartment, where some extremely important historical relics were stored, such as the huge straw hat in the ice cellar in front of me. This is the straw hat that Joey Boy wore on his head back then. Put your will in Nika, oh no, the rubber fruit, and use the reincarnation mechanism of the devil fruit to achieve another form of immortality. Is it really yours, big man? Smiled happily as he recalled the past hundreds of years ago. His predecessor would probably be very angry. Devil fruits are eaten by people and become parasitic in people's bodies. After people die, they turn into information flow and return to nature, looking for suitable fruits to reappear. In this process, there must be some kind of consciousness with certain intelligence. This point, the original timeline Vegapunk and others in the future have discovered it and made use of it, especially the animal-type devil fruit is the most obvious. The fruit itself has an existence similar to the beast soul, so Joey Boy, as the rubber fruit awakener, can completely replace or store consciousness. People in this world have souls, this is very clear, but presumably not everyone has the ability to store their souls in devil fruits. Therefore, thought of Haki. As the strongest person in the world, he also has the deepest understanding of Haki. Haki can carry and receive information, even if you don't understand the meaning of words written with armed color Haki. As long as you have the corresponding knowledge, you can perceive what the writer wants to express. This is called listening to the sound of everything. However, he could understand the words in the historical text. After all, he was a person of that era. The Haki that can carry and receive information, coupled with a strong enough soul and the awakening of devil fruit abilities, these three conditions should be indispensable. People who eat the rubber fruit will have the unique physique of the Lunaria tribe, a rubber-like elastic insulator and the ability to generate fire. They will also be parasitized by Joey Boy. When the Esper awakens, it will be the first time he wakes up. When said his guess based on the memory of his previous life, in other words, this can no longer be regarded as speculation, it should be called solid evidence. Although the predecessor didn't know this, he knew that the rubber fruit was Joey Boy's ability, so after finding the future, he sent CP9 headed by Foz Fu to escort him back, but Shanks snatched him away. Stood there for a long time, staring at the huge straw hat in the ice cellar, and fell into deep thinking, because these things were very important. He was thinking about what to do with this Shanks. First of all, he must be a descendant of the celestial dragons, otherwise there would be no way he could sit on the sofa in the Hall of Power and hold talks with the 5 old stars. This kid is probably like Doflamingo, and he has become a messenger under me. But this guy is quite good at acting. After all, he took away the rubber fruit directly from Roger, who raised him and taught him well, because he felt that his identity as a celestial dragon and his own strength were enough to deal with the revenge of the world government. He succeeded. Mihawk, who was sent over, had a big fight with him. There was no winner or loser. Instead, he became close friends. It's like we don't know each other without fighting, Having said this, a sneer appeared on the corner of M's mouth. The future 5 old stars, or I see that Shanks has matured and continue to keep in touch with him as a celestial dragon, hoping to adjust the situation and balance of the world through him. But the problem is, what I want now is not to maintain balance. The so-called Pirate Emperor must be dealt with. Use it if you can, and keep it if you can't. As a result, Shanks' value to the world government is not that great. He is just a descendant of the opposition with celestial dragon blood. This little guy Shanks has to catch him back. Since he is a celestial dragon, of course he has to come back according to the house order I issued. As for killing it, it is impossible. The privileges and status of the celestial dragon must be maintained. The celestial dragon can only die, and must not be killed by others, unless the person who does it is himself. The king of the celestial dragons gives the celestial dragons their death, and it is natural that this is M's position. I remember that Shanks is just 15 years old this year, and he must be in the East China Sea. This will be easy to handle. By the way, let CP1 catch that kid Bucky as well. Him immediately thought of the powerful Bucky bomb in the future. In his opinion, Bucky should continue to study this aspect, and maybe form a partner with Carter Frame in the future. 10 minutes later, he contacted the blonde 5-old star through the phone bug and gave him a series of orders. Because the content was a bit too much, the latter nodded repeatedly as he listened on the other side. By the way, from now on, Cypher Pol will cancel the rule that if you fail a mission, you will be sent to jail. If you fail a mission, you will be given a certain punishment and demotion depending on the situation. Im felt that this situation with Fozzie Fu must be put to an end. Who knows how many talents have been lost because of this kind of thing, besides, how much time and resources it takes to train an excellent CP personnel. As long as there is no malicious betrayal, it should not be forced to death. Yes, I understand, don't worry, I will definitely change it. The blonde 5-old star did not dare to ask anything, so he could only agree, although there were already many question marks in his heart. The historical text of the Alabasta Burial Hall, Shanks of the East China Sea, Bucky. After the call ended, he put the phone back, and the blonde 5-old star's face was full of surprise. Shanks, the former crew member of the Roger Pirates, is actually a descendant of the celestial dragons of the Regal family and a survivor of the Valley of Gods incident. If this is the case, then you really need to invite him back, otherwise it will be troublesome to become Doflamingo again. But why did you invite this Bucky back and send him to the Science Force for training? Im returned to the surface, and because it was already late at night, he returned to Tsukima's tree house. Guion and Stussy stayed in the room vacated by the maids, and continued to play tennis with him when it got daylight. Should I tell the 5-old stars about the Stargate? Although it has been decided to start researching the First World after this World Conference, it is better to tell it in advance. The first batch of dispatched personnel also needs time to be screened. Lying on the large golden-red double bed, Im looked at the star map of the universe that appeared in front of him and pondered. It seems like I need to think about my wording carefully. How do I explain this thing so that it sounds reasonable? It's a bit difficult. They say it's easy to fool people, but I'm too pure, innocent, and kind. I really can't think of any lies to deceive people. Hey, what should I do? Chapter 77 Dolag Celebration Party. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although it is late at night, the moon is shining high, and the sky is filled with stars. For some people, it is a good time to enjoy fun. Marineland, as the headquarters of the Navy, the world's largest military organization, naturally has no shortage of electric lighting, which also provides convenience for the island's nightlife. I saw only men and women wearing uniforms or casual clothes, walking along the streets, converging from all directions to one place, Seagull Tavern. This is the only tavern on the island, and it is also the largest multi-level public tavern that can accommodate thousands of people at the same time. Whether they are serving Navy personnel or their families, they can drink all kinds of wine and food here. In fact, more than 10 years ago, this pub was not so big, nor was it a duplex, because there were few residents on the island at that time. According to the regulations, as long as the military rank reaches the major of the headquarters, you can bring your family members in. But not many people were willing to move all the way here before, but since the family of Admiral Zifa was attacked by pirates and died 8 years ago, nearly 80% of the naval officers have chosen to bring their families here. As a result, the population increased dramatically, and the senior officials allocated funds to expand the tavern. For this reason, there is also an interesting theory circulating, saying that because there are more people on the island, there are not enough seats in the tavern. Marshal Kong found it difficult to find a seat to have a drink, so he ordered the construction of another floor out of anger. At this time, in this extremely spacious tavern, bursts of strong drum beats and various piano sounds, accompanied by infectious female singing, rippled wantonly in every air. There are no colorful lights here, and there are no smiling women in scantily clad clothes. There are only heartwarming pale yellow lights, but this does not reduce the excitement at all. On the familiar square wooden tables, there were a group of cheerful drinkers sitting around. They no longer cared about the difference in status and military rank. They were holding large wine glasses filled with golden wine and laughing heartily, arm in arm. Continuously, bartenders from family members quickly shuttled between tables and people, delivering wine and meat to each guest, chatting and laughing with them from time to time. Cheers! On the second floor, a group of people put 3 wooden tables together, picked up slightly heavy beer glasses and clinked them together, then raised their heads and drank, the liquid in the glasses pouring into their throats at an extremely fast speed. Bang, bang, bang. The wine glasses that had been drained in one gulp were placed heavily back on the table. A smiling Kazan looked at Dolag sitting opposite and laughed loudly. "Congratulations, you have made a great contribution and have been promoted to Lieutenant General." "Congratulations. Among the 3 of us, Lieutenant Kazan, another Lieutenant General has appeared." "Ha ha ha, tell me how you defeated that slave king." Dolag stood up and smiled as he glanced around at his friends. Kazan, Huashaoshan, Flying Squirrel, Gummel, were all graduates of the first 3 sessions of the training camp. Although there are students in the training camp every year, in terms of relationship, the first 3 are the closest, while those after that are strangers and can only be regarded as ordinary colleagues, except for those who could not come back from abroad. Everyone gathered here to celebrate his promotion to Lieutenant General today. "Teacher, thank you very much for coming to support me. I will toast you this cup alone." In the end, Dolag's eyes rested on Zifa, the most noble elder. He picked up the beer, filled his cup, and drank it all in one gulp. "Ha ha ha ha, good drinker." Zifa laughed happily when he saw this. Not to be outdone, he picked up the wine glass that Kazan helped fill and drank it. "Okay, let's drink the beer here. I want to try what the wine from Fishman Island tastes like." "You can do whatever you want." Today, Kazan and I were chatting in the office, and then we heard a call from he, telling him that he had another lieutenant general among his students. After Kazan heard about it, he enthusiastically organized the celebration, and finally dragged him, the teacher, over with him. He said that he had never celebrated before when he was promoted to lieutenant general, so we just happened to do it together this time. "Tell me, your trip to the South China Sea this time?" Just reading the description in the newspaper makes people excited. The slave king is very strong, right? I heard Major General AI once say that you suffered a lot of injuries, Kazan urged as he looked at Dolag who was sitting down. The surrounding flying squirrels, Huashaoshan and others were also full of curiosity. By the way, the latest issue of the newspaper was sent to all parts of the world this afternoon. Now everyone knows that Dolag defeated the slave king, and saved hundreds of thousands of innocent people. This has become the biggest topic in the Seagull Tavern tonight. Look, the sailors at the next table also pricked up their ears and looked over blatantly. Okay, I'll start from when I received the mission order. The process is a bit long, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Dolag didn't shirk, but there was no trace of pride on his face. He was still as cheerful as ever. Steady and calm, this also made Zifa look at him with more admiration. Zifa's most famous students were Sakaski, Porcelino and Kazan before, but now there is another Dolag. To be honest, the favorite among the 4 is Dolag, because he is the most serious about taijutsu, followed by Sakaski, and the person he dislikes the most is Porcelino. As Dolag spoke, although the music and singing from the first floor continued, the people at Kazan's table, as well as the navy and family members around them, naturally became quiet, even putting down their beer glasses. The strength is deliberately relaxed. Even the well-informed Zifa was listening silently. Ever since he resigned from the post of general and became the principal of the Naval Academy, he no longer pays special attention to outside affairs, and would only take a second look at something as big as the execution of the pirate king. When Dolag began to talk about leading 50 generals of his headquarters to use the power of the hurricane fruit to raid Shabak City from the sky through a ship, the expressions of the surrounding listeners became excited and expectant. Kazan, Flying Squirrel, Huashaoshan and others who were closest were listening with great interest, but when they heard the appearance of hundreds of black-striped guards who were powerful enough to suppress the lieutenant colonel of the headquarters, they frowned again. But the most fascinating part begins with the slave king. King Taklama's strong appearance wrapped in the wind and sand, powerful armed hockey, seeing hockey, superb one-handed staff technique, and the fruit awakening ability that can actually catch Sandstorm as a pet slave. Each of these can make people feel the power of the Slave King, and Kazan secretly wondered, could he survive it if it were him? His frozen fruit ability has not yet been awakened, and his physical skills and domineering skills are not as good as Dorag's. No matter how you look at it, he is a bit unsure. Thinking about the title of general on his head, he became more or less concerned about it, or felt a sense of tension and urgency. Among the 4 natural ability users in the Navy headquarters, it was obvious that he was the weakest, although this has a lot to do with age. Strong is strong and weak is weak. If you really encounter a powerful enemy, it won't care how old you are. In addition, he will be staying on Fishman Island for a long time in the future. That place is the gate to the paradise and the new world, and he will definitely encounter the strong men of the new world in the future. It seems that I need to capture Jean to improve my strength after I return. Whether it's for myself or to protect the safety of Fishman Island, I must reach the level of a general as soon as possible. Kazan's eyes gradually became firmer as Dolag's narrative unfolded. Chapter 78 Dolag's New Position and Wish. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. The whole process is like this. To be honest, there is a little bit of luck involved in defeating this Slave King. It is very difficult. I feel that if we try it again, there is a high probability that the result will be different. Dolag said in a deep voice with a lingering fear. Indeed, it's really suspenseful. If you hadn't forcibly improved your strength in the most dangerous and desperate situation, the consequences would have been disastrous. Hua Xiaoshan, who had always been optimistic, also had a serious face at this time. Zifa glanced around his outstanding disciples and asked, "What did you learn from Dolag's battle this time?" Flying Squirrel, Hua Xiaoshan and others looked at each other in confusion. Kazan's eyes revealed a hint of helplessness. He had already guessed what the big boss was going to say. Really, seeing that the students were silent, Zifa was not polite and said seriously, the importance of physical skills and domineering. This Slave King just ignored physical skills and domineering, and focused exclusively on fruit abilities. He did awaken because of this, but as a result, he was easily overtaken by Dolag, who was dozens of years younger than him. Well, teacher, judging from Dorag's description, this Slave King's domineering and physical skills are not weak, right? A not-so-famous colonel at the table rubbed the back of his head and said with a smile, and it's not easy for me to chase the ground. Beneath Dolag's calm surface, he couldn't help complaining in his heart, but Zifa snorted coldly. Humph, he is about the same age as me. His physical skills and domineering skills can only suppress this kid a little at first, but he is even surpassed later on. Isn't this weak enough? Upon hearing this, not to mention Kazan and the others around them, even the Marines at the next table twitched their mouths and roared in their hearts, "Oh my God, you were a former admiral, and now you still retain the rank of admiral. Are you actually using yourself as a standard for comparison? If you think about it this way, 90% of your peers in this world will live like dogs." Zifa ignored them. You must remember that regardless of whether you are an ability user or not, physical skills and domineering are the foundation of everything. You cannot rely too much on fruit abilities, otherwise you will end up like this Slave King. Do you understand? Yes, Teacher Zifa. Dolag, Kazan and others no longer had any objections and responded in unison, which made the other navy look envious. After all, not everyone can enter Zifa's training camp. Zifa nodded with satisfaction and then looked at Dolag. Yes, the momentum is good. By the way, the 2 cats you brought, I heard you describe them well, they are good prospects. Let them report to the training camp next year, and they will continue to follow you after graduation. That's great, I'll thank you on their behalf. Dolag showed a hint of joy. I reported my work in the marshal's office this morning. After reporting on the mission, I was promoted to lieutenant general on the spot. Then before leaving, I mentioned something about the black cat, 3-legged cat and the white cat fishing for kittens. There were no twists and turns. After all, they were 2 animal-type ability users. Cyborg Kong agreed to incorporate them into the Navy headquarters and assign them as his direct subordinates. Now they can train under teacher Zifa for another year. This is definitely a rare opportunity. The future of these two cats is at least a kernel. Speaking of which, I ordered the arrest of the slave king of the Dark World, thoroughly investigated the kingdom of Thutmose, liberated more than 200,000 slaves, organized fleets and manpower from various countries, provided them with treatment, food and temporary shelter, and finally let the South China Sea the Navy sent him back to his hometown. Kazan took a sip of the golden wine in the wine glass, exhaled a long breath, and grinned. In the past, I would have never dared to think about all of this. If Dolag hadn't told it himself, you wouldn't have believed it even if you heard it, right? Flying Squirrel, was Xiao Shan and others nodded thoughtfully. Although Kazan said it more implicitly, everyone knew that among them, Dolag had the deepest feeling. He looked at Kazan and said, "I think you must have been involved in something similar recently. I couldn't even think of it before, but now I think it's some incredible things, such as Fishman Island." He was thinking of the 200 fishmen and mermaids he saw arriving in the morning. "Hey, it's not just that. Listen to me next. After listening, you will be surprised." Kazan laughed with a red face. "Let me start with the mission I received in the Drum Kingdom. Next, he will follow Minister Mick of the Administration Department to the Drum Kingdom to work hard to build a 5-kilometer-high ice staircase. The world government will position the Drum Kingdom as a medical development cooperation country and establish a medical school and a world hospital system." Said it with great emotion. After that, he followed Coulson, the senior director of the Administration Department, to Fishman Island. He recounted all the details of the communiqué on equal and friendly relations signed by both parties. He became more and more excited as he talked about it. He picked up the beer mugs in his hands again and again, feeling the joy in his heart. It drips perfectly on the face. All the naval elites present were also amazed, especially Dolag and Zifa, who felt greatly shocked. They didn't feel much about the Drum Kingdom thing. After all, they didn't know much about medical treatment. However, a Navy branch was established on Fishman Island, allowing the Marine Corps to station and patrol the Shampoo Islands, allowing fishmen and merfolk to join the Navy, and even other departments of the world government. In the future, fish people will be allowed to live freely in the Shampoo Islands. Life and play, these sound outrageous. What happened to the world government? Dorag and Zifa looked at each other, and both saw shock in each other's eyes. The latter was the most surprised, because it was the first time that he realized these strange changes. Is this still the world government I know? I see, no wonder Marshal Kong sent me to the Chambord Islands to be the base commander. Dolag immediately thought of his next job. Vice admirals are divided into two categories. One is stationed at the Navy headquarters, and the other is sent to the major branches directly under the Grand Line, among which the GX series of branches are the most famous, but in addition, there are actually some smaller branches, which are also directly affiliated with the Navy headquarters. This is the case with the Navy branch on the Chambord Islands. After being promoted to Lieutenant General this time, he was directly appointed as the base commander of the naval branch stationed in Shampoo Islands. Marshal Kong's request was to strictly capture the pirates who arrived there and protect the fishmen and mermaids on the island. There are also controls on the coating industry on the island, prohibiting the provision of services to pirate ships, clearing out slave trading clubs, arresting relevant criminals, and liberating and properly disposing of slaves. However, those slaves who were originally pirates need to be taken to Judiciary Island for trial. Equivalent to sending it to Impel City. Generally speaking, Dolag will have to deal with a lot of things in the future, and they are all relatively dangerous things. After all, whether it is pirates who can reach the Chambord Islands through the Grand Line, or the vicious revenge of the slave industry, ordinary people really can't cope with it. However, Dorag accepted the order without any hesitation, because in his opinion, these were the most just things. While listening to Kazan's excited story, the former looked in the direction of the Holy Land Mary Joa. No matter what or who these strange changes are caused by, I sincerely hope that this change will continue. I am willing to go through fire and water for this and do my best to implement it. Since you are willing to change, then I, Dorag, will accompany you to the end. Chapter 79 4 Levels of the Grand Line. Additional update. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Cough, 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 cough. Just when Kazan finished talking about his recent experience, Zifa suddenly started coughing, and the cough was quite difficult. You could tell from his face and rapid breathing how uncomfortable he was. In fact, he had wanted to cough it out for a long time, but he deliberately held it back because he didn't want to disturb Kazan's speech. Now that Kazan had almost finished speaking, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Teacher Zifa. What's wrong with you? The faces of Flying Squirrel, Hua Shaoshan and others changed drastically, and they quickly asked worriedly. In fact, they had not seen Zifa for a while since graduation. After all, everyone was busy. Although it's better to be busy, I don't know much about Zifa's current situation. Phew, it's nothing, just a little problem, nothing to make a fuss about, it's much better now. Zifa's asthma finally stabilized. He took out a long breath and grinned. At the same time, he took out 2 white pills from his pocket and swallowed them with beer. His disease began to appear in the past 2 years, but the condition is not very serious. He only occasionally feels chest tightness, difficulty breathing, and coughing. In fact, he had already consulted the doctor on the island and prescribed medicine, and the effect was indeed good. However, he was told not to drink alcohol or smoke, but these were Zifa's favorite things and it was not so easy to quit. Teacher, although I don't know medical skills, judging from your symptoms just now, it should be related to breathing. I think you should pay attention to it. I think you understand it yourself. Kazan's words caused several people around him to nod their heads. Of course Zifa himself knew what he meant. As a master of pure physical arts, he knew the relationship between breathing and combat power better than anyone else. If a person cannot breathe smoothly, he will not be able to exert much strength at all. Even the essence of life return is inextricably linked to breathing. Have I already asked a doctor to prescribe medicine? It's just that this thing can provide good relief every time an attack occurs, but it cannot cure it. Zifa showed a slightly distressed look. I heard that if the asthma is more serious, you need to use some kind of hormonal spray to relieve it. Kazan thought of what happened before and said, since the doctors at our headquarters can't cure it, how about asking the doctors from the medical school in the Drum Kingdom to take a look? Doctors from the Drum Kingdom, what's the difference? Hua Shaoshan asked curiously, and Zifa and others also looked over. They had indeed heard Kazan talk about things in the Drum Kingdom before, but they didn't know much about the doctor either. Kazan chuckled and said, Alala, I don't know very well, but I heard from Minister Mick that there is the best doctor in the world there, that is Dr. Guriva, who was appointed as the dean of the medical school. A doctor who is over 100 years old but still maintains middle-aged vitality. I happen to know her, so I would like to introduce Teacher Zifa to have a look. Well, is he even the best doctor certified by the world government? I think he can. Flying Squirrel looked at Zifa happily and said. Really? Dolag and others also nodded in agreement, while Zifa hesitated and said, but I am very busy, I can't stop the students' training just to treat myself. I remember there was a holiday in the training camp, 1 day a week and a month-long holiday. Kazan said, recalling his past experience. Zifa glanced at him angrily and said, it's your vacation, and I have to come back to deal with school matters. That he is not only in charge of dozens of people in the training camp. There is also a naval headquarters school on this island, which is specially used to train a large number of sailors. The affairs involved in it cannot be said to be very large, but it is not a small amount. Then what should we do? Should we invite that Guriva doctor to come to Malinfando? Flying Squirrel asked, touching his chin. I think it's okay. The teacher has the rank of general after all. What's wrong with letting her come to see a doctor? Another colonel said. Well, this is a bit difficult. Dr. Gyulwa's temper is a bit violent. Kazan smiled awkwardly. When he thought of the witch-like female doctor, he felt that it was not reliable to ask her to come to the door. Moreover, Dr. Guriva is busy building the structure of the medical school and studying platinum lead disease, so it is impossible for her to come to the Navy headquarters, even if Teacher Zifa has the rank of general. that person doesn't care about these things at all. Then forget it. Zifa shook his head. At this time, Dolag spoke out his thoughts. The Drum Kingdom is a winter island. From what Kazan said before, it is a place with a harsher environment than an ordinary winter island. Can Mr. Zifa take the students from this training camp there to train for a period of time? Zifa's eyes lit up when he heard this. The cold low temperature, strong wind and heavy snow on Winter Island must be of great help in tempering the students' will. That's right, the teacher can train them while seeing and treating patients. As for the training content, I can think of one right now. There are 8 Sigu mountains there, but I only built the stairs leading to the main peak, and the other 7 but they are all at an altitude of 5,000 meters, and the wind and snow are extremely violent, allowing this class of students to climb the mountain with bare hands. Kazan cheerfully spoke out his wonderful proposal. Flying Squirrel, Hua Shaoshan and others beside him became interested and started thinking about what else on Winter Island could help this class of students. Their training content. Hey, I am doing this for the benefit of my fellow students. I have good intentions. I think the fellow students will understand and accept it happily. I may even thank them. Are there any ferocious beasts on the island? We can let the juniors wrestle with them in the ice and snow. Oh no, it's for sparring. I think we should let people without abilities do a special training of winter swimming around the island in the surrounding sea. Avalanche. They must face the avalanche. That the Navy and family members at the neighboring tables all looked at this group of crazy training camp seniors with their mouths open. Hey, are you serious? Even if you climb a 5,000-meter snow-capped mountain with bare hands, avalanches are mentioned, but they are avalanches. Do you know what an avalanche is? Hey, why is the one in front forgotten? Okay, seeing these guys talking more and more enthusiastically, Zifa slapped the wine table to stop them, but he still remembered the interesting training suggestions just now. I also think Dolag's proposal is very good. That's it. I'll take the training camp to the Drum Kingdom in a few days. With this decision, the time was almost up and everyone had finished drinking. They all picked up the justice coats on the chairs and put them on themselves. For a time, led by Admiral Zifa, Vice Admirals Kazan and Dolag followed closely on both sides, plus more than a dozen rear admirals and navy captains. They all walked up the stairs to the first floor of the tavern, immediately attracting people from the first floor. The eyes of all the guests and the bartender watched as these big guys opened the door and left. After coming out, everyone went back to their homes, except for Kazan and Dolag who stayed behind tacitly. They came to the beach of the port together and looked at the huge warships moored under the moonlight and the silvery waves. Waves. I guess you have noticed the changes in the world government. Dolag said in a deep voice. Kazan nodded and said with a smile, I am also full of doubts, but with our current status, no matter how hard we think about it, we will never be able to get in touch with the truth, so I choose not to think so much and complete the task at hand first. I believe you will know one day. Indeed, if you become an admiral one day, you should have the opportunity to know more secrets. When the time comes, I hope you can tell me. Dolag turned his head and said. Allah, of course no problem. Dolag continued, I just recalled the stationing positions of us. I am at the Chambord Islands, you are at Fishman Island, Portosalino is at G2 in the first half, and Sikaski is at G2 in the first half. G1 in the second half, what did you see? Kazan was stunned. A clear sand table of the Grand Route suddenly appeared in his mind, and then 4 light spots appeared on it, which were the garrison points of himself and others. The world government has set up 4 levels. Chapter 80 The Brand New Holy Land Tennis Court. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The next day, there was only a hint of fish-belly white morning on the horizon. Normally, because the height of the Red Earth continent is more than 5,000 meters, the temperature here should be very low, making people feel extremely cold, but due to the magic of the spring area, the Holy Land Marie Joa is in a relatively constant temperature state. At the moment when the sun is about to rise but has not yet risen, in the social square inside Mtlnovel Castle, Guillaume, who was wearing a coat of justice, stood on the grass that was full of potholes like a battlefield. She was holding the famous sword Kimpira in her hand and slashing forward. Every time she swung the sword, there was always a sharp sound of breaking through the air. This action happened over and over again, her pretty face full of seriousness. Hey, you really worked hard, Miss Navy. At this time, Stussy, who was wearing a black skirt and stockings, walked to the side with an elegant catwalk and said with a chuckle, "It's not even bright yet, and you're out practicing swordsmanship. Do you have any ambitions?" Guillaume didn't even look back at this, he still maintained his breathing rhythm, struck out with every force, and silently recited the number 2000 in his heart before exhaling a breath and stopping. "This is my daily training. As for ambition." She turned her head to look at Stussy and said decisively, "I want to become the strongest swordsman in the world." "But you are a woman." Stussy said with a strange look on her face, "Although I am not a swordsman, I also know that swordsmanship relies heavily on physical strength. It is impossible for us women to compete with men in this aspect, unless we eat something a powerful devil fruit. No, I don't want to be an able person." Guillaume put Kimpira back into its scabbard, shook his head, and said firmly, "I want to reach the strongest position as a pure swordsman." It was difficult for Stussy to understand why Guillaume pursues this kind of thing and what a woman should do to be the strongest, but she didn't question it anymore and said with a charming smile, "But I see you are becoming more and more addicted to tennis these days." Upon hearing this, Guillaume's cheeks were slightly red, he coughed to hide his embarrassment, looked at the rising sun gradually, and replied, "Actually, I found that playing tennis with Yora Cole Saint can also help improve my strength, so I hugged him." "Be serious about training." Stussy looked weird and looked like, "What the hell are you kidding about? Playing tennis is just playing tennis. It has nothing to do with exercise." Don't believe it, I'm telling the truth." Guillaume saw the opponent's eyes and said with some dissatisfaction, "Have you not discovered that serving and catching the ball in tennis test a person's strength, speed, reaction and eyesight? Recalling the power of those first few balls served by Dolag Saint, if one day we can hit them back, will it mean that our strength has improved?" It's true." Stussy was stunned, and the first ball served appeared in her mind. At that time, she didn't react at all, and she didn't have time to perceive the domineering force, and if you think about it carefully, although Yora Cole Saint has restrained her strength, even if she fights with him for a long time, she will still feel numbness in the tiger's mouth, sore waist and back pain, and she will sweat profusely every time. Fortunately, those maids are very good. Every time they come out of the shower, they can always see freshly washed and dried clothes neatly placed in front of them. So, starting from today, I decided to ask Joe Lackey to increase the power and speed of his serve to the critical point that I can bear now, so as to challenge my limits." Guillaume pinched her waist solemnly and said passionately. Behind her, the golden crow slowly rose above her head. "Do you want to come along?" Forget it, I'm not interested in being the strongest or anything like that. I prefer to play a dozen normal tennis balls. I think it feels more like a game." Stussy didn't want to be as hardworking as Guillaume. In comparison, he was more curious about Saint Colical, because he was too mysterious and powerful. The key is that he looks too handsome, and I haven't seen a wife or concubine these days. In addition to her somewhat domineering personality, she looks like she is the only one who wants to do whatever she wants. I feel that all conditions are so good. Seeing this, Guillaume didn't say much, but just when she was about to go back and wash up, she suddenly found a group of workers she had seen before, walking quickly pushing large and small boxes on wheels. "Aren't they the same people who built this tennis court before?" Stussy raised an eyebrow and guessed, "Are they here to repair the grass?" Guillaume didn't reply, but nodded in agreement and thought it was very possible. After all, the current turf of the stadium is terrible. However, when they came to repair it a few times before, it seemed that they were done while they were sleeping. When they woke up, they came out and saw that it had been restored. But soon, as these workers started construction, the two beauties watching from the side discovered that there was something different from what they thought. These people are not so much repairing the turf as they are remodeling the entire tennis court. They first fill in the uneven ground, then lay a layer of thick wooden boards and spray it with blue spray paint. It turned out that the turf field was to be changed into a wooden field, but what's the use of that? Even the wooden boards can't withstand the balls we hit, and it's even more difficult to repair. Guillaume asked doubtfully. The person she asked was the government official in a black suit who led the team. Major General Guillaume, you don't know. These are atom boards that were processed last night. With their extremely strong toughness and solidity, they can withstand the huge pressure of tennis balls. Atom? Guillaume and Stussy were immediately shocked, and their mouths opened slightly. The latter murmured to himself, so, in the future, we are going to play ball on a floor worth 1 or 200 million belly on the black market. After the man introduced the material of the wooden boards, he then pointed to the vermilion nets that divided the court into two halves and said, they are made of Neptune-like tendons and are also impact-resistant. The two women were silent. After a moment, Guillaume asked expressionlessly, what about the ball? What is it made of? And the racket? Tennis has not changed much. After all, rubber is already the best material. The rackets are made new. The throat, handle, head and other main parts are also made of atom wood. The team leader from the construction department spoke clearly. The origin of the tennis string is unclear, but we have tested that its strength is several times stronger than the commonly used composite string. Even if it is bombarded with cannonballs, there is no damage. On the contrary, the steel cannonballs are easily cut. More than an hour later, a brand new tennis court appeared in front of Guillaume and Stussy. It was a venue composed of a blue court and a red net. There were 4 ink sticks on a shelf not far away. Red racket. By the time the construction workers left, the sun was already high in the sky, and the bright sunshine shone on the neat and tidy court, which really made them feel a little dazzled. Do you think this stadium looks familiar? Guillaume suddenly spoke to break the silence. Stussy next to him pursed his lips and said softly, using the red earth continent as the net, the first half and the second half of the grand route as the two halves, the long dark blue area between the singles area and the doubles effective area, it should be the windless zone. Guillaume looked at the court and hesitated. I don't know why, but I don't dare to step into this stadium. What's wrong with that? But as soon as she finished speaking, a familiar voice of command came into her ears. She turned her eyes and saw him, whose pseudonym was Yora Cole Saint. He casually picked up the tennis racket on the shelf and stepped into the great rout. The second half of the half. Come, play with me and try your hand.